a lot of ex-players, you mentioned Cruyff before, they're forever talking about, and probably rightly so, about the lack of creativity or the number 10s dying out, if you like, this sort of stuff. How do you build creativity? How do you develop creative players?
By first of all, with the technical skill. Secondly, by encouraging, that the first thing a player loses is the capacity to dribble if you don't work it in training. Because why? Dribbling is linked with confidence. And if you, in training, you do not allow your skillful players to work on that, they don't reproduce it in the game, because that's the first thing that you lose, is your confidence in your passing. And as well, encouraging players to be audacious in the game, because most of the players who are creative sometimes are inhibited in the big games. Why? Because they have a big responsibility on their shoulders. You say, you, my friend, you have to make the difference now. Yeah. You're the most skillful player, so you have to be have a positive attitude with them. But you say, okay, it's getting more difficult. What is Lionel Messi's quality? Is to dribble, is to pass players in a very short space. Yeah. That means the players adapt to the problem. Ronaldo, they adapt. You still have creative players, but you have to give them more room to express their talent.
Earlier you were speaking today, you talked about the development of players. Australia is, after a long sort of hiatus, we're really now starting to look at a technical revolution. We have our first technical director. It'd be hard to believe for a Frenchman who's had a system for a long time, but we're now looking at the production of players. What type of players should we be looking to build to play for the likes of Arsenal, a team that we've never had a player, we've never had a player at Barcelona? What is the model of the player that we should be looking at? And you mentioned about the 5 to 12 age bracket. Just give us a sense of how important that is.
Because usually when people start to develop players, they start at 20 and go down. I believe it's reverse. We should start in 5 and go up. Yeah. Why? Because you build a play like a house with a technical skill. The second stage, second floor, is the physical from 12 to 16, then 18 to 20, the tactical knowledge, and then kicks in the mental side of it. So if you don't start at the basement of the house, that means the rest of the work is useless. And the basement of the house is between 5 and 12. If you have no technique at 12, you never have technique. So that means that's the most important age to develop the players.
So where are the best? You mentioned Brazil before.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I must say I must congratulate Australia. Right. Because it's a very short nation number-wise.
Yes.
And if you look at the global achievement over sport, I admire Australia for that, because they've done, if you consider all the sports, it's quite a sporty nation.
Yes, very much so. And now we're really starting to focus on football. We just made our second consecutive World Cup. So Australia's really starting to mature in the sense that we want to know how to put the best coaching system into place. And you're renowned for that. Let's talk about the Arsenal system underneath. You've brought it in, you've implemented it. Is it something that you've brought from your French heritage and from the FFF system, or has it been changed through your worldly view through Japan and around?
Yes, there was an evolution. I believe I had the luck to have a good education, coaching education in France, and then everybody adapts to his own philosophy of life, and but things that you learn not to make mistakes as a coach when you have a good education. After you develop in every player what you think is right for him. But overall, I believe that technique. Football is a technical sport. Why you use your feet, and to use your feet is not natural for a human being. And that's why it needs to adapt very early to develop that kind of skill. And the first, if I say to you, for example, where are the best football players in the world, you will say Brazil. Are they stronger? Do they run more than other countries? Certainly not. Where do they make the difference? With technique. And second question, when do you develop technique? When can we be like Brazil? By working between 5 and 12.
But they also in Brazil, the big part of their platform 5 to 12 is futsal in the schools, right? It's huge. And it must be a key element, but it's something that in Europe is not quite, it's not something that you implement at Arsenal, for instance, is that right?
What?
The futsal.
Futsal, no, we don't. But they develop their skills a lot in that, it's true. Why? Because you play with a reduced number and you can play as long as you want. Does it rain outside or not? If you have 5 friends, you play. But as well, what we forget, in these countries, they still are not spoiled, footballing spoiled, what I call in brackets, by educational computers. They still play a lot in the street. You have been in Brazil, you know, they have still big, a lot of wild football. That means they come out of school, they play until night, and that's a good education.
Yeah, and they're back on top, going well now in the qualification for next year's World Cup. Just projecting ahead, what's your view of the World Cup? Obviously Spain on top in Europe now.
Yeah, I believe that it will be very interesting to see if Spain, who is dominant in Europe at the moment, will be dominant in the South African World Cup. I believe there will be a very interesting candidate. Of course, you put always Brazil and Argentina in there. A typical Asian team I don't see to compete. In Africa, I see only Ivory Coast, who has the real potential to compete with the top level teams. Australia, I think, I don't know, but have they 11 players to win the World Cup? Sincerely, I don't think so, but they can maybe have an interesting part to play.
Yeah, for us it's great to be there, and we're hopeful put a system in, something closely akin to the Arsene Wenger philosophy in the next 10-20 years, and one day we hope and we believe we'll win it. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you very
Arsene.
much.
Very much appreciated.
Bye-bye. Thank you.